So it turns out DragonCon ended up having a World of Warcraft panel. Yeah, I really didn't expect that either. It was with senior designer Jonathan LeCraft, which is either his real name or some sort of pun because he works quite a bit on the crafting parts of the game. Now, oddly enough, we got loads of interesting tidbits here, covering pretty much everything. So let's get right into it, starting off with professions. So the profession team is, as we know, much larger, and there will be profession quests, which is quite exciting. It's definitely lovely to hear, and I really hope that these quests are decently in-depth. Being able to customize crafts and perhaps unlock some really cool options would be kinda nice. I wouldn't mind them having something similar to the older systems of having different masteries, for an example, weaponsmithing or armorsmithing. He also said that there will be little to no cooldown material gating in Legion. Phew, I mean, come on, like that aspect really killed Warlords of Draenor professions for me. Having less CD stuff means you are limited by how much you are willing to put into that system, which I think is a pretty good state for professions to be in. He also said that the sort of state where most stuff is available from level 1 is going to continue, and honestly, I don't see what's wrong with having max level crafts only be for the skilled crafters. Now, perhaps they could do it so that you would have a leveling catch-up that would yield some sort of common crafting material, which would mean that even while you're leveling, you're at least getting something which is useful to somebody and maybe could go up on the auction house. He also said that crafted gear is going to stay with the same 3-slot maximum system, and also upgrade tokens are gone in favor of you melting down your item to get resources, which are then used to build other items, hopefully more powerful ones. Now, honestly, I prefer the idea of the game having a number of unique bits of crafted gear, rather than having something for every single slot, because that feels a little bit generic, and I especially think that when it comes to weapons. Some of the older crafts, especially the ones that really had to be earned, definitely stick out in my mind and feel iconic because of that. And he also said that prospecting may return. Now, I really enjoyed doing the various different ore shuffles that were available in the game, where you prospect ore and then do things with what you got from that. I thought that was really fun, and in a way, now that I'm playing a bit of EVE Online, it was kind of Babby's first industry, which was interesting. Now, yeah, it's no EVE Online, but it did create more interaction between professions, so I think prospecting coming back would be quite nice. Maybe they could do a few usability improvements, though. Next, artifacts. They briefly touched on the artifact weapons, saying that they may or may not involve bits of old world content, and that they have, quote, leveled up in comparison to the past expansions, big legendaries. So hopefully when he says leveled up, that's going to equate to no bullshit time retention grinding mechanic, because I think everyone hates that. I also love the idea of there being old world content that's sort of relevant to the artifact weapons, though it's all a question of how. Perhaps you would be stopping a Legion invasion event and you claim its power for yourself and like that goes into your artifact weapon. Maybe it's just going to be another source of artifact weapon experience. Perhaps they'll do some sort of scaled content thing. It's really quite hard to know at this stage. Next, let's hop on over to classes, and I've got a real treat for you here, actually. Apparently, quote, most of the specs are being overhauled in some manner, with the goal being to really focus on spec fantasy. Some specs are even going to be renamed. He also said that some resources will be renamed. For an example, Shadow Priests will be using something called Insanity. Sounds lovely, and this is great to hear. Warlords of Draenor pruned a lot of the fun out of many specs, and homogenization is very present and very powerful. And while a lot of specs technically are different, I definitely get the feeling that playing multiple characters, at least as a DPSer, they all feel very similar to play. Now, this would appear to be a recognition of those problems, which is very, very nice to see, but of course we will obviously have to wait, and that goes for everything I say in this video. This could all sound brilliant in paper and end up being diabolically awful. Next, survival hunters are going to be able to use a harpoon to pull mobs towards them. As a hunter, I am pleased. Now then, demon hunters. So, demon hunters are currently, in their head, going to be starting at level 98 in this expansion. And they're also going to be using glaives or one-handed swords, though do bear in mind that the artifact weapon is a glaive, so you probably won't be using one-handed swords for the vast majority of Legion. As we know, melee is the main focus, but they are going to have some ranged abilities like their eye beam, and lore-wise, Illidan is apparently ready to lead the demon hunters against the Legion. So the only big news here is really the starting level of 98. It might change, yes, but it would seem that we will do the Demon Hunter stuff to level 100 and hop right into the Legion content. I would be very surprised if new Demon Hunters would be doing any Warlords of Draenor content. The Illidan stuff is kind of what I expected, but really the big question and where the interesting stuff is going to sort of happen is what happens to Illidan before he takes up that position as class leader, because he's probably going to be kind of pissed off after we break that class and free him. So there's definitely going to be a very cool plot arc going on there, and I'm sure he'll have some interesting development as the expansion continues. Anyway, that's enough of Demon Hunters. Let's talk about transmog and various things like that. So, they're going to be doing a Diablo 3 style transmog system for this expansion, and due to this, no more void storage slots will actually be needed, according to what he had to say. Now, they did say that for Warlords of Draenor, but the system never arrived. I've got to assume that it's probably ready by now. They have had some time. And this is brilliant to hear, though. The effects on both storage space and usability for the feature will be great, and apparently it might be account-wide. That's very, very, very interesting, and I wonder if there will be restrictions on some certain items like, say, the challenge mode gear. Is that going to be completely across your account? Hard to know. Also, I can imagine some really handy interactions between a new transmog system like that, and then add-ons such as Mogget. Also, he said there's going to be no big Boomkin revamp. Now, the Boomkin model, it's really old, really, really old. I think it looks oddly good considering its age, but I think it at least needs a bump up in its texture resolution and definitely some more detailed animations. And next, we hop onto the glorious topic of reputations. There will be, according to him, all new rep factions in Legion. I mean, that's kind of what we expected, but you can guess what my thoughts are on this. I like that content, I think it's good optional stuff. So hopefully it's not shit like the Warlords of Draenor stuff, and they seem to understand that the Warlords reps were terrible, so maybe they are going to do something good here. Again, we have to wait and see. Next, Flight. He said that Flight will be an expansion-wide unlock, and you know what? That's pretty much how I would do it. Since it will be planned sort of for, the whole duration of Legion, the idea of having flying eventually, they will probably avoid a Warlords of Draenor fiasco. Ideally, I think that flying should be unlockable once the very first content patch, which adds a new landmass, is added to the game. So to use MoP as an example, I would have unlocked Pandaland flying in patch 5.2. I think that's just overall a good way to keep some people happy, but also sort of reap all the benefits of that grounded gameplay, which I do believe is far better, and definitely gives a game designer a lot more to work with. Anyway, let's move on to just some general miscellaneous things. Now, Jaina is not going to be the leader of the Kirin Tor. Why? Because they've got some other plans for her. This is great to see. She has a lot of potential, and I would really like to see that character get developed. I just hope that they don't do a Yerl with Jaina, because she is a character who is very ingrained into the story, and to see them mess that up would really suck. Next, we've got a slight tidbit on dungeons, which I should have included in the profession section of this video, but essentially, they're going to talk more about how they're going to keep them relevant later, but they are going to have some profession drops inside dungeons. Right, so here's my thoughts on this. I think it's really good provided the items are bound on equip. If they're BoE, then it creates a gold-making opportunity for running dungeons, and it forms a kind of micro-economy surrounding that little gameplay loop, which I think is absolutely a good thing. It creates another player, sort of level of player interaction that's potentially fantastic. Also, Stormwind Park is not going to be revamped. They can just say the Legion invasion destroyed it again, and pull the wool over our eyes, and it'll be fine. It's a bit of a pity, yes, but honestly, I would rather have a new dungeon than people, than fix up Stormwind Park. Just give me a dungeon instead. I think that could end up being more fun, though they really should get on top of that at some point. Now, he also mentioned pet battles, saying that major developments for them will occur post-launch. So essentially, big pet battle things are not really in their launch slate for Legion. I think that makes good sense, and I'd say that other stuff with a wider reach should take priority for the launch. And finally, I can't believe I left this one to the very end, because it's pretty fucking big. Multi-Strike is gone, and they're changing other stats, including secondaries and tertiaries. Holy shit, I'm really glad to hear that. With Warlords, they removed the reforging problem, and they replaced it with the current loot problem. Great, we swapped one for the other. Toning down some stats, and hopefully, not toning down, just changing up some stats, and then making others more interesting is probably a good step. MS being gone is particularly interesting because it actually is integral to a few classes' mechanics. and I assume those specs might be seeing a decent bit of change. I do wonder, though, if tertiary stats are going to see a particularly big change, because they didn't really go down that well with Warlords. I suppose it's not that they went down that well, it's just they did so bloody little that they hardly went down at all. You never really noticed they were a damn thing. In fact, the most noticeable one, oddly enough, was probably Indestructible. That's the one everyone laughed at. Yeah, tertiary stats. But anyway, hopefully they really fix up that stats sort of situation. I'm a bit worried they're going to continue Diablo-ifying loot, which I think is very unfortunate. But at least if they clear up the stat problem, we might be in a good spot. Anyway, that's essentially it for what was covered. Now, there are some ramblings about something called Adventure Mode. He didn't say anything specific. We'll find out more in BlizzCon. I'll probably do a speculation video very soon, but that's definitely one I'm going to have to think about a little bit more. This is just me covering the news. Overall, as much as I was sort of dry during parts of this video, that's just the mood I'm in right now. Overall, very, very, very pleased with nearly everything he had to say. All very heartening stuff, but take it with a grain of salt. It could all be shit. It could all be brilliant. We will just have to wait and see. And with that very, very unsurprising bombshell, thank you very much for watching the video. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section, and I'll see you next time.